Hey, how did you sleep last night? If you're a fan of scary stories to fall asleep to, you've found the right place. Welcome to Midnight Lullaby. A like and a subscribe means a lot to this channel, and make sure we will meet again. Also, let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let the story carry you into dreams. Story 1. I'm a journalist by trade, which means I'm professionally skeptical. I deal in facts, evidence, and verifiable sources. So when I first heard about Frostvale and its legend of the weeping woman of Thornwater Lake, I dismissed it as typical rural folklore. The kind of story that attracts amateur ghost hunters and generates clickbait articles. But then the pattern emerged. My name is Catherine Reed, and I work for a small investigative journalism outlet that specializes in unsolved mysteries. 3 months ago, my editor forwarded me a tip from an anonymous source. Over the past 30 years, 17 people had vanished in or around Frostvale, a remote town in the mountains of Oregon. All were outsiders. All had come to investigate the local legend, and none were ever found. 17 people. 30 years. No bodies, no evidence, no explanations. It should have been national news, but somehow it had stayed buried in local police reports and forgotten missing person databases. The more I dug, the stranger it became. The cases were handled by the county sheriff's department, but investigations were always cursory, concluded quickly, and filed away with disturbing uniformity. Victim likely succumbed to harsh wilderness conditions. Search unsuccessful. Case suspended pending new evidence. No continued searches. No media attention. No grieving families demanding answers. It was as if Frostvale had a way of making people forget. I arrived on a gray afternoon in late November, 2 weeks before the winter solstice. The town was exactly what I'd expected, picturesque, in that deliberately quaint way that tourist towns cultivate, with cobblestone streets, Victorian storefronts, and an ice skating rink set up in the town square. Christmas lights already festooned every lamppost, despite Thanksgiving having just passed. But underneath the charm, I sensed something else, a watchfulness. As I drove down Main Street toward the bed and breakfast where I'd booked a room, I noticed curtains twitching in windows, faces appearing briefly before pulling back. Small towns are naturally curious about strangers, but this felt different. This felt like surveillance. The Thornwater Inn stood at the edge of town, overlooking the lake that gave it its name. My host was a woman named Margaret Thornton, 50-ish, with the kind of carefully maintained appearance that suggested significant effort beneath the casual surface. "Welcome to Frostvale," she said, her smile bright and her eyes unreadable. "What brings you to our little town?" I'd prepared my cover story carefully. "I'm writing a piece on small town life in America, traditions, community bonds, that sort of thing. I heard Frostvale has a fascinating history." "Oh, we certainly do," she replied, leading me up the stairs to my room. "Though I'd say our present is more interesting than our past. We're a very close, knit community. Everyone looks out for everyone else." The way she said it made it sound less like comfort and more like warning. My room was comfortable and impeccably decorated, with a view of the lake. Thornwater was larger than I'd expected, stretching several miles across, surrounded by dense pine forests. In the fading afternoon light, its surface was flat and gray, like hammered steel. I spent my first evening in town doing what journalists do, making myself visible, striking up casual conversations, asking innocent-seeming questions. The local cafe, the general store, the historical society, everyone was friendly, too friendly. They smiled too quickly, answered too readily, and somehow managed to say absolutely nothing of substance. When I brought up the legend of the weeping woman, I got the same response from everyone, delivered with slight variations but identical in essence. Oh, that old story. It's just folklore, really. Probably started as a cautionary tale to keep children from wandering near the lake at night. Nothing to it. The consistency was unnerving. It was as if the entire town had rehearsed their responses. On my second day, I met Thomas at the town library. He was the librarian, a thin man in his 40s with nervous hands and a tendency to glance at the door whenever someone entered. When I asked about historical archives related to the weeping woman legend, he hesitated. "You're not the first person to come asking about that," he said quietly, pretending to organize books on a nearby shelf. "Oh, who else has asked?" "Researchers. Journalists like yourself, I imagine. Curious folk." He paused. "They usually don't stay long. Why not?" He finally met my eyes, and in them I saw genuine fear, quickly masked, but unmistakable. They find there's nothing to the story, get bored and move on. But his hands trembled as he shelved a book. That night, I did what any good investigative journalist would do. I broke into the town hall's record room. I'd learned long ago that the truth often hides in bureaucratic paperwork. Minutes from town council meetings, budget allocations, property records. The kind of boring documentation that no one thinks to monitor closely. What I found was illuminating. For a town of barely 800 residents, Frostvale was remarkably prosperous. Property values were high. The tax base was robust. There was zero unemployment, literally zero, according to the most recent economic survey. The school had won state awards for the past 15 years straight. Health outcomes were exceptional. Crime was virtually non-existent. It was perfect. Too perfect. And buried in the older records, I found something else every 30 years. Like clockwork, the town underwent a significant renewal. New businesses would open. Infrastructure would be updated. The population would experience a slight uptick. It had happened in 1965 and 1995 and was due to happen again this year. I photographed everything, uploaded it to my encrypted cloud storage, and slipped out the way I'd come. The next morning, I received an unexpected invitation. It was delivered by hand to the inn. A cream-colored envelope with my name written in elegant calligraphy. Inside was a single card. "You are cordially invited to attend the Frostvale Winter Festival on December 21st. Please join us for an evening of celebration, tradition, and community. Your presence would be most appreciated. The Frostvale Community Council, December 21st, the winter solstice. Exactly 2 weeks away." Margaret found me reading the invitation at breakfast. "Oh, how wonderful!" she exclaimed. "The Winter Festival is a great honor. We only invite special guests." "What happens at the festival?" I asked. "It's a tradition dating back to the town's founding. A celebration of community, of the bonds that keep us strong and safe." Her smile never wavered. "We perform the old ritual at midnight, at the edge of Thornwater Lake. It's quite beautiful, really. You'll see." That afternoon, I drove to the county seat to access police records that weren't available online. The sheriff's deputy who helped me was young, bored, and refreshingly unhelpful. "Frostvale cases. Yeah, we don't really. The sheriff handles those personally. Says it's sensitive, community relations and all that. Can I speak with the sheriff? He's actually in Frostvale right now. Spends a lot of time there, especially this time of year. He grew up there, you know. Goes back for the winter festival every year, never misses it." Of course he did. I spent the next week gathering information, talking to people, watching and waiting. And slowly, carefully, the truth began to emerge. Not from what people said, but from what they didn't say. No one ever spoke about the lake itself, except in the most superficial terms. No one mentioned fishing, swimming, or any recreational activity involving the water. The public dock was maintained but unused. There were no boats, no swimmers, no children playing at the shore. The lake was avoided, feared even. I began taking walks at night, circumnavigating Thornwater, studying it from different angles. And on one of those walks, 5 days before the solstice, I saw something that confirmed my darkest suspicions. I was standing at the northern shore, hidden in the tree line, when I heard voices. A small group of people emerged from the forest, walking toward the water's edge. They carried something between them, something large and heavy, wrapped in canvas. I recognized them: the mayor, the sheriff, Margaret from the inn, and several others. They walked to the end of the dock and stood there for a long moment, speaking in low voices I couldn't quite hear. Then they unwrapped the canvas, and I saw it was a deer, a large buck, recently killed. They attached weights to it and lowered it into the water, and the water accepted it. I don't mean it simply sank. I mean something rose from the depths to take it. I saw the water bulge upward, saw something vast and dark moving beneath the surface. There was no splash, no disturbance. The deer simply vanished, pulled down so quickly and smoothly it might have never existed. The group stood there for another moment, heads bowed, before turning and walking back toward town. I ran. Back at the inn, I spent the rest of the night researching the town's history more carefully, going back to its founding in 1875. What I found was a pattern. Frostvale had been established by a group of settlers who'd survived a brutal winter after their original settlement location proved uninhabitable. They'd found Thornwater Lake and built their town beside it. And from that very first year, they'd thrived. Impossibly well, considering the harsh conditions and remote location. There were historical accounts, written by travelers and visiting officials, that described the town's prosperity as uncanny and unnatural. One particularly detailed journal entry from 1889, written by a federal surveyor, noted, "The people of Frostvale exhibit a disturbing unity of purpose. They speak of the lake with reverence bordering on worship. When I inquired about their success, they attributed it to the blessing of Thornwater and the understanding we have reached. I confess I found their manner unsettling and departed earlier than planned. Over the decades, there were other accounts. Visitors who felt unwelcome, investigators who found nothing, people who vanished. The pattern was clear. Frostvale had made a bargain with something in the lake, something old, something that demanded payment. And that payment was due every 30 years, on the winter solstice. The invitation suddenly made terrible sense. They weren't inviting me to observe their tradition. I was the tradition. I was this cycle's payment. The knowledge seeker, the outsider who came asking questions. The sacrifice that would buy them another 30 years of prosperity, health, and peace. I should have left immediately. I had enough information for an expose that would bring state and federal investigators swarming to Frostvale. All I had to do was drive away, get to safety, and publish what I'd learned. But I'm a journalist. We're cursed with the need to know, to witness, to document. I wanted proof, real, undeniable proof of what was happening here. So I stayed. The days before the solstice took on a surreal quality. Everyone in town seemed to be preparing for the festival with an almost manic energy. Decorations appeared everywhere. Not Christmas decorations, I realized, but something older. Symbols carved from wood and hung from doorways. Garlands made from pine and holly that formed patterns I didn't quite recognize. Margaret became more insistent that I attend the festival. You really shouldn't miss it, she said at breakfast on December 20th. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm sure it is. I replied, my hand unconsciously checking that my phone was in my pocket, recording everything. That evening, I made my preparations. I uploaded all my evidence to multiple cloud services with dead man switches. If I didn't check in by December 23rd, everything would automatically send to my editor, to major news outlets, to law enforcement. I sent encrypted messages to colleagues with my location and suspicions. I made sure my phone was fully charged, my GPS tracker was active, and I had a knife tucked into my boot. Then I waited for midnight. The festival began at 11. I left the inn and walked toward the lake, following the stream of townspeople heading in the same direction. Everyone was there, every single resident of Frostvale, from infants to the elderly, all walking in silence toward Thornwater. The shore had been transformed. Torches lit the darkness, their flames casting wreathing shadows across the water. A circular space had been cleared, ringed with stones. In the center stood a wooden platform, extending out over the water. The crowd formed a circle around the clearing. They stood in absolute silence, watching as the town council members took their positions at the cardinal points. Then Mayor Harriet Thornton, Margaret's sister, I'd learned, stepped forward. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Welcome to the 150th Winter Festival of Frostvale. Tonight, as we have done for generations, we renew our compact. We give thanks for the prosperity we have received, and we honor the commitment our founders made." She turned to face the lake. "We ask for protection, for health, for unity, for another cycle of peace and plenty." Her voice dropped lower. "And we offer, as is tradition, a seeker of knowledge, one who came asking questions, one who sought what should remain hidden." All eyes turned to me. I didn't run. There was nowhere to go. The crowd surrounded me, blocking every path. "Catherine Reed," Margaret said. She looked almost sad. "You're a smart woman. Surely you understand. Everything we have, our safety, our prosperity, our happiness, it all rests on this. One life, every 30 years, for the well-being of 800. The mathematics are quite clear." "What's in the lake?" I asked, proud that my voice didn't shake. "Something old," the mayor replied. "Something that was here long before humans walked these lands. Our founders found it, or it found them, during that first terrible winter. They were dying, freezing, starving, and it offered them a bargain: prosperity for the town, protection from the harsh world, in exchange for a sacrifice. A life, once per generation, offered freely by the community. Someone whose questions and curiosity had brought them to our shores. Freely. I laughed bitterly. There's nothing free about this. We choose to participate. Thomas the librarian said quietly from the crowd. Every resident of Frostvale knows the truth by the time they're 18. We're given a choice: leave and never return, or stay and share in the compact. Most of us stay, because it's evil to refuse, someone else added. The alternative is watching your children suffer, your elderly die in pain, your community tear itself apart. We've seen what the world outside is like. The violence, the poverty, the senselessness of it all. Here, we have peace. Here, we have meaning." They began to move toward me, not threatening, but inevitable, like the tide coming in. "You can fight," the mayor said. "You can scream and struggle, or you can walk to the platform with dignity. Either way, the result is the same. The lake will have what it's owed." I looked at their faces. Ordinary people, good people, probably. Parents and teachers and shopkeepers, united in a conspiracy of comfortable horror, and I made my decision. "I'll walk," I said. "But I want to ask one thing first." The mayor nodded. Go ahead. Do you ever regret it? Do you ever wonder if the cost is too high? For a moment, genuine emotion crossed her face. Every day, she whispered. Every single day, but we regret it in comfort and safety. And that has to be enough. They led me to the platform. As I walked, I saw faces I recognized. The cafe owner who'd served me coffee with a smile. The shop clerk who'd chatted about the weather. Thomas who'd tried to warn me in his way. All of them watching, all of them complicit. I reached the edge of the platform and looked down at the dark water. Last words. The mayor asked, not unkindly. I pulled out my phone, held it up so they could all see the recording light. Everything is documented. Everything is uploaded. Everything will be found. No, Margaret said sadly. It won't. We control the narrative here. We always have. Your evidence will be lost, corrupted, or dismissed as fantasy. We've been doing this for 150 years, Catherine. We're very good at it. She was probably right, but I'd still tried. The crowd began to chant, low, rhythmic words in a language I didn't recognize. The water began to move, to churn. Something was rising. I saw it then, vast and dark and impossibly old. Not a creature exactly, but a presence. A thing of water and shadow, an ancient hunger that had existed since before humanity learned to name its fears. And I understood why the founders had made their bargain. Because refusing this thing would have meant death. Not just for them, but for everyone. It had the power to destroy, and they had given it a reason not to. One life every 30 years. A terrible bargain, but perhaps the only one they could make. The thing in the water reached up with appendages that weren't quite tentacles, weren't quite anything I had words for. The crowd's chanting grew louder. I closed my eyes, and I felt myself falling. If you're reading this, then somehow my dead man switch worked. Somehow this message escaped Frostvale's control. I don't know if anyone will believe it. I don't know if it matters. But know this, there are places in this world where old bargains still hold. Places where communities have traded their souls for comfort. Where the price of prosperity is paid in blood and silence. Frostvale is one of them. But I don't think it's the only one. Ask yourself, what would you sacrifice for safety? What would you ignore for peace? How many lives is your comfort worth? The water is cold. The darkness is absolute. And something old and patient waits in the deep places. The compact is renewed. The bargain holds. And Frostvale thrives. Story 2. We should have turned back when the trail markers disappeared. That's what I tell myself now, 3 years later. When the memories surface unexpectedly, triggered by the smell of pine, or the sight of a windowless cabin, or just the particular quality of silence that settles over the world at dusk. We should have turned back, mapped a different route, admitted we were lost, and made camp where we stood. But we were 20, too invincible, or believed we were. And Jake had his compass, and Maya swore she recognized the ridge line from the park map. And none of us wanted to be the one who suggested we admit defeat on what was supposed to be a triumphant 4-day backpacking trip through the Cascades. So we kept walking, deeper into forest that grew increasingly unfamiliar, following what might have been a game trail, or might have been nothing at all, while afternoon shadows lengthened and our confident jokes grew quieter and less frequent. We'd started from the visitor center at dawn, the 4 of us, myself, Jake, Maya, and Sophie. Old friends from college, making good on plans we'd been discussing since graduation. The first day had been perfect. Clear skies, manageable terrain. That particular kind of exhaustion that feels virtuous and earned. We'd camped at a designated site, cooked freeze, dried meals on our portable stoves, told stories around a properly contained fire. Day 2 was when things started to go wrong. The trail we'd planned to follow had been washed out, redirected by a recent mudslide. The new markers led us in a direction that didn't match our map. Jake insisted the compass was accurate, but the landscape didn't align with what we expected. By afternoon, we'd veered off any official trail entirely, trying to cut through to what Maya thought was the next valley over. That's when we found the cabin. It sat in a small clearing, maybe 30 feet across, surrounded by Douglas firs that seemed to lean in toward it like conspiring giants. The cabin itself was tiny, one room, maybe 12 by 12 feet, built from logs that had weathered to silver gray. The roof was intact, surprisingly, covered in moss but not caved in. A single window, empty of glass, stared out at us like a dark eye. Someone lived here, Sophie said, stating the obvious because none of us quite knew what else to say. Long time ago, probably, Jake added. He'd already shrugged off his pack, rolling his shoulders with relief. We'd been hiking for 7 hours with only brief breaks. Might be dry inside. We could camp here tonight, get our bearings in the morning. I felt uneasy about it, though I couldn't articulate why. There was something off about the clearing, something too quiet even for deep forest. No bird calls, no rustling of small animals in the underbrush, just our breathing and the whisper of wind through the pines. I don't know, I said. We could push on a little further, maybe find a better spot. But I was outvoted 3-1, and honestly, I was as tired as the rest of them. My feet ached, my shoulders burned from the pack straps, and the thought of shrugging off that weight and sitting down, really sitting down, not just crouching on a rock for 5 minutes, was almost overwhelmingly appealing. We approached the cabin carefully, calling out to make sure no one was inside, though it was obviously abandoned. The door hung crooked on leather hinges, and when Jake pushed it open, we were hit with a smell that was surprisingly clean. Just old wood and earth, and that particular mustiness of places long unoccupied. The interior was sparse. A rough wooden platform that might have served as a bed. A few metal cans rusted through and empty. A fire pit ringed with stones, the ashes long since scattered. And in the corner, barely visible in the dim light filtering through the window, a wooden crate. Maya saw it first and moved toward it with the curiosity that made her such a good researcher. She was in graduate school, studying anthropology, and couldn't resist evidence of human habitation. She crouched beside the crate and lifted out what I initially thought was a book. "It's a journal," she said, her voice carrying a note of excitement. "Look at this. The first entry is from 1981. We crowded around her as she carefully opened the leather-bound notebook. The pages were yellowed but intact, protected by the crate from moisture and decay. The handwriting inside was neat and precise, each letter formed with care. "Read it," Sophie urged, and Maya did. June 15, 1981. "Today marks the beginning of my great experiment. I have left behind the hollow rituals of society, the meaningless pursuit of possessions and status, the endless noise and distraction. Here, in these mountains, I will discover what man truly is when stripped of civilization's corrupting influence. Thoreau had his Walden. I have my wilderness. I expect the transition will be difficult, but I am prepared. Simplicity, solitude. Truth, a hermit," Jake said, like a modern-day mountain man. "That's actually pretty cool." Maya flipped through a few more pages, scanning the entries. The journal was dense with text, dozens of entries filling hundreds of pages. He was really committed. "This thing goes on for years." "What happened to him?" Sophie asked, looking around the cabin nervously. "I mean, obviously he's not here anymore. Maybe he left." I suggested, though even as I said it, Something felt wrong about that explanation. Why would someone so dedicated to this lifestyle simply abandon it? And if he'd left, wouldn't he have taken his journal? Maya was still reading, skipping ahead through the entries. The early stuff is all pretty philosophical. He talks about learning to trap, to forage, to read the weather. He seems happy, I guess, fulfilled. She paused, her finger tracing down a page. But then it starts to change. Change how? I asked. She didn't answer immediately, just kept reading, her brow furrowing. It gets darker. Listen to this. She found a page and read aloud November 3, 1982. The solitude I sought has revealed itself as something else entirely. Not peace, but absence. Not silence, but the echo of silence, which is somehow worse. I thought I would discover my true self out here. But instead I'm confronting the question of whether there is a self at all without others to reflect it back. Am I still human if there is no one to witness my humanity? Do I exist in any meaningful sense? Jesus, Jake muttered. That's heavy. Maya continued flipping through the journal, faster now, and I could see her expression shifting from interest to something else. Something like concern. It keeps going. The entries get more frequent but less coherent. He starts talking about the trees, about how they're watching him, about sounds he hears at night. And then she stopped, staring at a page. What? Sophie asked. What does it say? Maya looked up at us, her face pale in the dying light. The later entries, they're not really sentences anymore, just fragments and drawings. Symbols I don't recognize. And the handwriting. She turned the journal to show us. The neat script from the early entries had deteriorated into violent slashes across the pages, words written over other words until they were barely legible. Jake took the journal from her and leafed through the final pages. Each one was worse than the last. Increasingly frantic scrawls, entire pages covered in the same word, repeated hundreds of times, Ael and Elohim, Elo Eloni. Others showed crude drawings of the forest, the trees rendered as jagged teeth, and figures that might have been human, but weren't quite right. The proportions distorted. The angles wrong. When's the last entry? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Jake checked the final written page. August 12, 1994. The words hung in the air between us. 1994. This was 1996, 2 years ago. Recent enough that the journal was still in good condition, that the cabin hadn't yet succumbed completely to decay. That's not that long ago, Sophie said quietly, voicing what we were all thinking. Where did he go? And why would he leave this behind? I moved to the window, looking out at the clearing. Dusk was settling in fast, the way it does in deep forest, where the tree canopy blocks so much of the sky. The shadows between the trees were thickening, becoming impenetrable. We should set up camp outside. I don't want to sleep in here. Agreed? Maya said quickly, setting the journal back in the crate with a care that suggested she wanted to be done touching it. We pitched our tents in the clearing, as far from the cabin as we could manage while still staying on relatively flat ground. We built a fire, more for comfort than warmth, though the temperature was dropping, and ate our dinner in near silence. The journal had cast a pall over the trip, raising questions none of us could answer. Tomorrow we find the actual trail, Jake said as we banked the fire for the night. We get back to civilization, finish this hike the right way. We all agreed. Though I noticed none of us mentioned coming back to this spot, reporting it to park rangers, or doing anything else that might bring us into contact with the cabin again. I woke in the deepest part of the night to the sound of movement outside my tent. At first, I thought it was one of the others getting up to pee, not uncommon on camping trips. But the sound was wrong. Too heavy, too close. The footsteps circled the tent, slow and deliberate, stopping occasionally as if whatever was out there was listening. I lay frozen in my sleeping bag, barely breathing. The tent fabric was thin. If something wanted to reach me, it could. The footsteps completed another circuit, then stopped directly outside the entrance. "Hello," I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient forest sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird, had ceased. It was as if the world were holding its breath. Then, slowly, I heard the zipper on the tent entrance begin to move. Someone was opening it from the outside. I scrabbled backward in my sleeping bag, away from the entrance, my hands fumbling for my flashlight. The zipper continued its slow descent, the sound impossibly loud in the silence. I found the flashlight, turned it on with shaking hands, and aimed it at the entrance just as the zipper reached its end and the flap fell open. Nothing. Empty darkness beyond the tent. I kept the flashlight beam steady, pointing at that open entrance, expecting at any moment to see a face appear, hands reach in, something to explain what had just happened. But there was nothing. Just the night and the forest and the faint glow of our banked fire reflecting off the trees. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay there with my flashlight clutched in my hand, listening to the silence until gray dawn began to seep through the tent fabric. When I emerged, shaky and exhausted, I found the others already up, gathered around the dead fire. They looked as bad as I felt. Dark circles under their eyes, expressions of strained tension. "You heard it too," Maya said. It wasn't a question. Something was outside my tent, I admitted. It opened the zipper. Sophie nodded jerkily. Mine too. But when I looked out, there was nothing there. "Same," Jake said. He was holding the journal. At some point during the night, he'd retrieved it from the cabin. I couldn't sleep, so I started reading. Really reading. All the way through. He looked at us, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. We need to leave. Right now. Jake. Maya started. The last entry. He interrupted. The one dated August 1994. I read it more carefully. It's hard to make out because the handwriting is so bad, but I'm pretty sure it says they're real. They've always been real. They're in the trees and under the trees, and they watch and they wait and they're going to. He stopped, swallowing hard. That's where it ends. Mid-sentence. That doesn't mean anything, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. He could have just left. Realized he was losing his mind and went back to civilization. Then why didn't he take the journal? Sophie asked. And why? She pointed past the cabin, toward the tree line. We all turned to look. In the gray morning light, I could see what she was pointing at. Marks on the trees. Dozens of them, carved deep into the bark. The same symbols that had appeared in the later pages of the journal, covering the trunks of the pines in a rough circle around the clearing. We're leaving, Maya said, her voice tight. Pack your things. We're leaving right now. We broke camp in record time, stuffing our gear into packs, with none of the careful organization from the previous days. Jake tried his compass, but the needle spun erratically, refusing to settle on a direction. The maps we'd brought were useless. We'd wandered too far off the marked trails. This way, I said, pointing in what I thought was the direction we'd come from. It was a guess, but staying in that clearing felt increasingly impossible. Whatever had circled our tents during the night, whether it was the hermit, or something else, or just our collective imagination fed by exhaustion and fear. I couldn't spend another moment there. We hiked in silence, pushing through underbrush, scrambling over fallen logs, moving as fast as our tired legs could carry us. Behind us, the clearing and its cabin receded into the forest, swallowed by the trees. We eventually found a trail. Not the one we'd been looking for, but something maintained enough to follow. It led us to a fire road, and the fire road led to a parking area where a ranger station sat like a beacon of civilization and safety. The ranger on duty listened to our story with professional courtesy, making notes about the cabin's location, though I could tell he was skeptical of our urgency. "Probably just an old homestead," he said. "People used to live pretty rough back in these mountains. We find old cabins and campsites all the time." "And the journal?" Maya asked. "Doesn't it concern you that someone might have been living out there as recently as 2 years ago? That they might still be out there?" The ranger's expression shifted slightly. "2 years ago, you said." He pulled out a file cabinet, thumbed through papers. Yeah, actually, we did have a missing person case around then. Guy named Peter Sutherland. Retired professor who decided to try the simple life. Family reported him missing when he stopped cashing his pension checks. We searched the areas he was known to frequent, but the forest up there is thousands of acres. Easy to get lost. Easy to just disappear. "Did you find the cabin?" I asked. "No. Like I said, it's a big forest." He closed the file. "But I'll send a team to check out the location you described. If it is Sutherland's place, at least we can give his family some closure." We gave him our contact information and left, driving back to the city in Jake's pickup truck. None of us suggested finishing the hike. None of us wanted to spend another night in those mountains. For a while, we tried to talk about it, tried to make sense of what we'd experienced. But the explanations never quite worked. Yes, we'd been tired and disoriented. Yes, the journal had primed us to expect something frightening. Yes, wind could sound like footsteps, and tent zippers could be opened by a good gust. But that didn't explain the symbols carved into the trees. It didn't explain why all 4 of us had the same experience in the night. And it didn't explain what the ranger told me when he called 3 weeks later. They'd found the cabin, he said. They'd found the crate and the journal. But there was no sign of Peter Sutherland, no indication of where he'd gone or what had happened to him. The cabin showed no signs of recent habitation. One strange thing, though, the ranger added. We did find something else. What? A ring of stones about 50 yards from the cabin, arranged in a perfect circle. And in the center, he paused, some bones. Deer, we think, though we're having them analyzed to be sure. But the way they were arranged, it wasn't natural. Wasn't predation. Someone, or something, had deliberately placed them that way. I thanked him and hung up. I never told the others about that call. What would have been the point? We'd already decided, without explicitly discussing it, to move on from the experience. To file it away as a strange adventure, nothing more. But 6 months later, Maya sent me a photograph via email. No message, just the image. It showed a page from an academic journal, an article about isolated communities, and the psychological effects of extreme solitude. The author had included a sidebar about cases of people who'd attempted to live completely alone in wilderness settings. One of the cases was Peter Sutherland. According to the article, Sutherland had been a philosophy professor obsessed with the concept of authentic existence. He'd believed that modern society had corrupted humanity's essential nature, that only by removing oneself completely from all social contact could one achieve true self-knowledge. In 1981, at age 43, he'd liquidated his assets, purchased minimal survival equipment, and disappeared into the Cascade Mountains. The article mentioned that his journal had been recovered. heavily redacted portions had been made available to researchers. The author noted that Sutherland's entries showed a predictable progression from idealism to isolation, induced psychological deterioration. What made the case unique, the article claimed, was the speed of the decline. Most people who attempt extreme isolation show gradual psychological changes over years. Sutherland's journal showed dramatic shifts within months. The article's conclusions suggested that some individuals might be particularly vulnerable to what it called solitude psychosis, a state where the absence of external social validation leads to a kind of existential collapse, where the boundaries between self and environment begin to dissolve. But that wasn't what made Maya send me the photograph. At the bottom of the article, in a footnote so small I almost missed it, was this note. Local indigenous accounts, collected in the 1930s, reference an area roughly corresponding to Sutherland's location as a thinking place, where young men would go for vision quests. However, these accounts consistently warn against staying longer than 3 days, claiming that the old listeners in the trees would begin to notice solitary individuals and become curious. The accounts describe these entities as neither benevolent nor malevolent, but intensely interested in human consciousness, particularly consciousness in distress. Whether these accounts influenced Sutherland's experience is unknown. I read that footnote a dozen times, then called Maya. She answered on the first ring as if she'd been waiting. "You saw it," she said. "The old listeners." "I've been researching," Maya said. Her voice was different than I remembered, tighter, more controlled. Not obsessively, just casually, looking into indigenous folklore from that region. The Cascade tribes have dozens of stories about forest entities. Most of them describe beings that are curious about humans, but not quite able to understand us. They watch. They mimic. They try to communicate, but don't quite succeed. Maya. The symbols? She continued, talking faster now. The ones carved in the trees around the cabin. I sketched them from memory, showed them to a professor who studies indigenous writing systems. He said they don't match any known tribal language, but the pattern suggests an attempt at communication, like someone trying to write who doesn't fully understand how writing works. What are you saying? I'm saying Sutherland wasn't alone in those woods. I'm saying something was watching him. Something that got interested in him because he stayed too long, because his isolation made him visible, maybe. Vulnerable. And whatever it was, it tried to understand him, tried to communicate. But the attempt itself, she trailed off, drove him insane, I finished. Or changed him, Maya said. The ranger report you didn't tell us about. I made some calls, got access to the file. They never found a body. Never found any evidence of where Sutherland went. Just the journal and those symbols and the bones arranged in patterns. Why are you telling me this now? A long pause. Because 3 weeks ago, Jake called me. He said he's been having dreams. In the dreams, he's back at the cabin, and he can hear something moving outside, just like that night. But in the dreams, he goes outside to look, and he sees. She stopped. What does he see? He won't tell me, but he said he's been researching too. He found references to similar cases. People who spend time in isolated places, who encounter something they can't explain, and then can't stop thinking about it. Can't stop dreaming about it. Like it's not over. Like whatever they encountered is still aware of them, still watching from a distance. That's ridiculous, I said, but I felt cold. We got out. We left. We're hundreds of miles away in a city with millions of people. There's no way. I wake up sometimes, Maya said quietly, and I swear I can smell pine needles. I can feel that particular kind of silence that isn't really silence. And I think, what if it's not about physical distance? What if those things, whatever they are, once they notice you, they don't stop noticing? I didn't know what to say to that. We talked for a few more minutes, made vague promises to stay in touch, and hung up. I told myself it was just lingering psychological effects from a stressful experience. Anxiety. Maybe a touch of shared trauma. But that night I woke at 3 a.m. to absolute silence. The usual city sounds, distant traffic, the hum of the refrigerator. My neighbor's television through the thin walls were absent. In that silence, I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling. I turned on every light in my apartment and sat on the couch until dawn, telling myself it was just old building sounds, just my imagination, just anything except what I feared it might be. The sounds stopped when the sun came up, as if they'd never been there at all. That was 3 years ago. I haven't been hiking since. Haven't been camping, haven't even gone to a park with too many trees. My friends think I'm agoraphobic, or dealing with anxiety, or just got soft in my 20s. I let them think whatever they want. Because every few months, on nights when the city is quieter than usual, I hear those footsteps again. They circle my apartment the way they circled the tents. Sometimes I hear the sound of my door handle being tested, slow and patient, as if whatever is on the other side has all the time in the world to figure out how it works. I've never opened the door to check. Jake moved to Phoenix, Maya told me, as far from the Cascades as he could get while staying in the United States. Sophie stopped answering emails after the first year. The last I heard, she'd sold everything and moved to Tokyo. Running, probably, though from what and to where, I don't think she could say. Maya still calls me sometimes, late at night. We don't talk about the cabin anymore. We don't talk about the journal or Peter Sutherland or the old listeners. We just stay on the phone together. Two people pretending to have a normal conversation while we both listen to the quality of the silence on our respective ends of the line. Sometimes I wonder if we brought something back with us from that clearing. Not physically. Nothing so simple as that. But attention, maybe. Interest. We spent a night in a place where something old and patient dwells, something that notices when humans linger too long in its territory. And once it notices, does it ever stop watching? I don't know the answer to that. But I know that I check my locks 3 times before bed now. I know that I sleep with lights on, because the darkness seems too deep without them. And I know that sometimes, in that space between waking and sleep, I hear that voice from the journal entry Jake read to us. They're real. They've always been real. They're in the trees and under the trees, and they watch and they wait. The entry ended mid-sentence, but I think I know what the next words were going to be. They're going to follow. They're going to come. Because whatever Peter Sutherland discovered in his isolation, whatever was watching him carve those desperate symbols into the trees, whatever arranged bones in patterns no animal would make, it didn't stay in the forest. Why would it? The forest was never its home. It's older than forests. It was there before the trees grew, and it will be there after they fall. It exists wherever humans are alone, wherever consciousness confronts itself in isolation. It's drawn to that particular frequency of human thought, the way sharks are drawn to blood and water. And once it's tasted your particular frequency, I think it never quite forgets. That's why I'm writing this down. Not as a warning, exactly. What would I warn people against? Don't go hiking. Don't read old journals. Don't spend too long thinking alone in the dark. These things are unavoidable. We all do them. Maybe I'm writing this because getting it out Making it concrete in words will somehow break the connection. Maybe if I finish the sentence Peter Sutherland couldn't finish, if I speak the thing he discovered into the light, it will release its hold on me, on all of us. Or maybe I'm writing this because I need someone else to know. Because if it comes, when it comes, there should be some record of what happened. Some explanation for what they'll find, or what they won't find. The footsteps are outside again tonight. I can hear them through the walls, patient and persistent. Circling. The door handle turns slightly, testing learning. It's been 3 years, but whatever is out there is in no hurry. It has all the time in the world, and I think eventually I'm going to open that door. Not tonight, maybe not for years, but eventually the curiosity will become too much, or the fear will exhaust itself, or I'll simply forget why I was so afraid in the first place. When that happens, when I finally open the door to see what's been waiting there all this time, I hope I'm wrong about everything. I hope I'll find nothing but an empty hallway and the ordinary sounds of an ordinary city night. But I don't think I will. I think I'll find what Peter Sutherland found, what the indigenous accounts warned about, what waits in the spaces between our thoughts, patient and curious and hungry to understand the strange, isolated consciousness that calls itself human. And I think that understanding, when it comes, will be the last thing I ever know. The footsteps have stopped. The door handle is still. But I can feel it out there, on the other side, waiting. Always waiting. Always watching. Forever interested in the curious animal that thinks it can be alone. Story 3. I started hearing my mother's lullaby again 3 months after she died. Not in my memory. That would be normal, expected even. No, I heard it coming from my daughter's room at night, sung in a voice that sounded like my mother's, but couldn't possibly be. Emma is 4 years old. She doesn't remember my mother well. Cancer took her before Emma could form lasting memories of bedtime stories and gentle songs. Yet every night for the past 2 weeks, I've stood outside Emma's door and heard that familiar melody drifting through the crack. Hush now, little one, close your eyes. The moon is watching from the skies. Sleep deep, sleep well, sleep true, and we'll be waiting here for you. It's a simple song. My mother sang it to me. Her mother sang it to her. Generations of our family, passing down this melody like an heirloom. I always meant to sing it to Emma, but something stopped me. Some instinct I couldn't name. Now Emma sings it every night, and each night the words are slightly different. The first time I noticed the change was last Tuesday. I was finishing dishes when I heard Emma's small voice from upstairs. Hush now. Little one, close your eyes, the moon is watching. It never dies, sleep deep, sleep long, sleep well, sleep true, and we'll be coming soon for you, coming. Not waiting, coming. I dried my hands and went upstairs, but when I opened her door, Emma was already asleep, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. The nightlight cast soft shadows across her face. She looked peaceful, normal. I told myself I'd measured. That grief was playing tricks on me. That I was projecting my loss onto innocent childhood babbling. But the next night, I heard it again. Hush now, little one. Close your eyes, the moon is watching with hungry sighs. Sleep deep, sleep long. Don't make a sound, we're getting closer. We'll soon be found. This time I opened the door immediately. Emma sat up in bed, blinking at me in the sudden light from the hallway. Mommy, I was singing Grandma's song. Where did you learn that song? Sweetheart, Grandma taught me. She said it so simply, as if it were obvious. But Grandma's not here anymore, remember? Emma tilted her head, considering this. She comes at night, when you're downstairs. She sits on my bed and sings to me. She smiled. She says it's important I learn all the words right. My skin went cold. All the words. There are more words than you know, Mommy. Lots more. Grandma says the song gets longer every time someone forgets to sing it properly. She says we have to sing it right or something bad happens. I sat on the edge of her bed, trying to keep my voice steady. What kind of bad thing? Emma shrugged. She didn't say. But she looked sad when she talked about it. Sad and scared. She yawned. I'm sleepy now. Can I finish singing? No, I said too quickly. I mean, not tonight. Let's read a book instead. But as I read to her, I could hear her humming under her breath. The melody of the lullaby, persistent as a heartbeat. I started researching our family history the next day. My mother had been an only child, and her mother died when I was young. I barely remembered her. Just flashes of white hair and gnarled hands, and a voice that sang constantly, even when there were no children around to lull to sleep. In my mother's belongings, which I still hadn't fully sorted through, I found a box of old letters. Most were mundane, shopping lists, appointment reminders, notes to herself. But at the bottom, I found a journal I'd never seen before. The entries were sporadic, dated over the last year of her life. Most were about her illness, about pain and treatments and fear. But one entry, dated 2 months before she died, was different. I tried to warn Alice when she was young, but I didn't want to frighten her. Now I wonder if that was a mistake. The song has been in our family for 7 generations that I know of, possibly more. Each generation, it gets longer. Each generation, the words change slightly, becoming something else, something darker. My grandmother told me the song started as a simple lullaby. 4 lines, gentle and sweet. But her grandmother sang 8 lines. By the time it reached me, there were 16. Now, when I sing it alone in the dark, 2 lines come out of my mouth, and I don't recognize half the words. The song is growing, feeding on something. On us, maybe. On our fear, our love, our need to protect our children. It's become something we can't stop singing. Something that sings itself through us. I'm afraid of what it will be when it reaches Emma. Afraid of what the final verse might demand. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. 32 lines? I only knew 4. What were the other 28? What did they say? That night, I stayed outside Emma's door with a notebook, writing down every word I heard. She sang for 20 minutes straight, her small voice never wavering, never pausing for breath. When she finally stopped, I had 64 lines written down. The lullaby had doubled again. The later verses were nothing like the gentle song I remembered. Hush now, little one. Don't you cry. We're in the walls, we're in the sky. We're in your breath, we're in your blood. We're in the rain. We're in the flood. Close your eyes and you will see all the things you're meant to be. Not a child, not quite awake. But something new the song will make. We are many. We are one, our mother. We are done. We are waiting. We are here. We are everything you fear. I burst into the room. Emma was standing on her bed, eyes closed, swaying slightly. She was still singing, even though I'd interrupted. The words kept coming out of her mouth. Faster now, hush now, little one. Join the song. You've known the melody all along. Your mother sang it, and hers before. Now you must sing it evermore. Emma! I grabbed her shoulders. Her eyes opened, but she didn't stop singing. Her pupils were dilated, almost black, reflecting the nightlight like twin moons. Hush now, mother. Don't be afraid. This is the bargain that once was made to keep your children safe from harm. You gave us voice. You gave us form. She was speaking to me now, I realized. The song was addressing me directly. Through Emma's mouth, something else was talking. What are you? I whispered. Emma's mouth smiled, but it wasn't her smile. We are what the song made. We are what happens when love turns hungry, when protection becomes prison, when a mother's voice becomes a cage. I don't understand. Your great-grandmother was desperate. Her child was dying. She sang a song of protection over and over, willing it to work, begging any power that would listen to save her baby. Emma's head tilted at an unnatural angle. Something listened, something old. It gave her what she asked for. The child lived. But the song had been heard, being changed. It needed to be passed on. It needed to keep growing. Let her go, I said. She's just a child. She's the 7th generation. The song is complete now, 64 lines, a full melody, a full transformation. Emma's body shuddered. She'll be safe. Safer than she could ever be in this dangerous world. Safe inside the song, where nothing can hurt her. Where she'll sing forever. No. I pulled Emma close, feeling how cold she was. How still. You can't have her. We don't want her. We want you to choose. The voice coming from Emma changed again, becoming multiple voices, layered like harmony. Every generation, the mother chooses. Sing the song completely, and your child stays. Refuse, and the protection ends. The bargain breaks, and your child, well, the world is so very dangerous. I held Emma tighter. Her heart beat against mine, fast and frightened. Behind her calm expression, my daughter was still in there, trapped, waiting to see what I would do. If I sing it, I said slowly, what happens to me? You become what your mother became. What all the mothers before her became. A voice in the song. A warning. A guardian. You'll watch over your child from inside the melody, keeping her safe until she has a child of her own. Then you'll teach them, as we taught Emma. As we taught you, though you were too afraid to listen. I thought of my mother, wasting away in her hospital bed, still humming that melody even in her morphine dreams. Had she been trying to warn me? Or had she been trapped, unable to stop singing, unable to break free? There must be another way, I said. There is always another way. Stop singing. Break the chain. Let your daughter face the world unprotected. Let her grow up vulnerable and exposed. Let her take her chances. The voices paused. But you know what this world does to little girls. You remember what it did to you. I did remember. The fear, the danger. The 100 small violences that shaped me into someone cautious and afraid. My mother had protected me as much as she could, but some things got through anyway. Some wounds cut deep. Could I really let Emma face all that without protection? Could I break the bargain and hope she'd be strong enough to survive? Emma's voice, her real voice, broke through suddenly. Mummy, I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. The song hurts. It's too big. There's not enough room for me in it. I looked at her face, her real face, frightened and small. And I made my choice. I began to sing. Not my mother's lullaby. Not the dark song that had grown through generations of fear and desperate love. A different song. One I made up on the spot, pulling melody from someplace deeper than memory. Wake up, little one, open your eyes. The sun is rising, time to fly, be brave, be strong, be wild. Be free, for the world is yours, not ours to keep. Emma blinked. The black faded from her pupils. Color returned to her skin. The temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath, could hear whispers in the walls. Angry, pleading, desperate whispers. The voices of all the mothers who had made the other choice, who had sung the protective song and been absorbed into it. My mother's voice rose above the others. Alice, don't. You don't know what you're doing. The world will hurt her. Yes, I said, still singing my new song to Emma, holding her close. It probably will, but she'll survive. She'll be strong. She'll be free. She'll be hers, not ours. Wake up, little one. Don't you see love isn't chains? Love sets you free. We'll face the danger, face the night together. Not hidden from the light, the whispers became screams. The walls shook. Emma's nightlight exploded in a shower of sparks. In the darkness, I could see them, the mothers. Generations of women, translucent and trapped, reaching for us with desperate hands. You'll regret this, they said in unison. When something happens to her, when you can't protect her, when the world breaks her, then I'll help her heal, I said firmly. I'll be there. As a mother, not as a cage, not as a song she can't escape. I sang louder, my own melody drowning out the lullaby. Emma joined in, making up her own words, her own tune. Our voices clashed and merged, creating something chaotic and imperfect and real. The trapped mothers faded. The whispers stopped. The cold dissipated. Emma's room returned to normal. Just a child's bedroom, full of stuffed animals and picture books and the gentle hum of an ordinary night. Emma looked up at me, fully herself again. Is Grandma gone? Yes, sweetie. I miss her. Me too. I kissed her forehead. But she wouldn't want to be a song. She'd want to be a memory. A happy one. Will you teach me that new song? The one you just made up? I smiled. We'll make up new ones together. Different songs every night. Songs that change and grow and end when they're supposed to end. Okay, she yawned. Normal 4. Year, old tiredness. What if something bad happens to me? What if the song was really protecting me? It was the question I'd been asking myself. The fear every mother carries. I could lie. I could say nothing bad would ever happen. But that would be starting another lullaby, another protective fiction that might grow into something monstrous. Something bad might happen, I said honestly. And if it does, I'll be there. Not as a song, not as a spell, but as me. Your mom. We'll get through it together. Promise. Promise. She fell asleep quickly, without singing anything. Just a child sleeping, dreaming whatever dreams are hers alone. I stayed in her room for a long time, listening to the silence. No whispers in the walls. No melody I couldn't control. Just the ordinary sounds of an ordinary night. But sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I still hear the old lullaby. Faint and distant, like something remembered from a dream. All those mothers, still singing, still trapped in their protective love, still waiting for someone to join them. I sing my own song louder. Different words, different melody. Different every time so it can never take root. Never grow. Never become something my daughter will have to escape from. And Emma, she makes up her own songs now. Silly ones. Happy ones. Songs about dinosaurs and ice cream and flying to the moon. Songs that end. Songs that let her go. But sometimes, late at night, I catch her humming something that sounds almost familiar. Something with the same rhythm as the old lullaby. The same cadence, even though the words are different. And I wonder if I really broke the song, or if I just changed it. If protection and love and fear can ever truly be separated, or if they're always intertwined, always singing together in some melody we can't quite escape. The song might be dormant now, waiting, growing quieter but not gone. Ready to emerge again when Emma has children of her own, when she feels that same desperate need to keep them safe from a dangerous world. And when that time comes, will she remember what I taught her? That love can exist without chains. Or will she hear her grandmother's voice in the walls, singing that old, familiar melody, promising perfect protection if she'll just sing along? I don't know. I can't know. That's the terrible freedom of letting go. You can't control what happens next. All I can do is teach her different songs. Hope they're strong enough. Hope she's strong enough. and stay awake, listening, just in case the old lullaby starts up again. Because the thing about songs is this, they're never really gone. They're just waiting for someone to remember the melody. And in the quiet of the night, in the space between sleeping and waking, we all remember. Story 4. I've always been a night person. The world feels different after midnight. Quieter, more honest somehow. That's why I started listening to late night radio. Nothing specific, just whatever station my old transistor radio could catch through the static. Most nights, it was talk shows, distant music, the occasional weather report from towns I'd never heard of. Tonight feels different though. The air in my apartment is thick, almost syrupy. I can't sleep. My sheets feel wrong against my skin, too smooth and too rough at the same time. So I reach for the radio on my nightstand, its worn plastic surface familiar under my fingertips. The dial clicks as I turn it. Static washes over me like waves. I twist slowly, searching for something, anything. Then a voice cuts through crystal clear. And we continue our broadcast from nowhere and everywhere. The time is 12:47 a.m., though time means less than you think. The announcer's voice is smooth, almost too perfect, like honey poured over gravel. I've never heard this station before. I look at the dial, but the numbers blur in the dim light of my bedroom. I should get up and turn on a lamp, but I don't want to move. Something about this voice holds me still. Tonight's news comes from places nearby and far away, from corners you pass every day but never truly see. Let's begin. There's a pause. I hear paper rustling, though it sounds wrong. Too crisp, like autumn leaves rather than newsprint. Our first story, a woman in apartment 4C, has been watering a dead plant for 3 weeks. She speaks to it every morning. It listens. On Thursday, it will respond. My breath catches, but I don't apart many plants. I killed the last one, a succulent, supposedly unkillable, 6 months ago. Threw it out. The pot is still on my windowsill, though, empty. Has been empty this whole time, hasn't it? I don't look. I keep my eyes on the radio, on the soft orange glow of its frequency indicator. Second story. The mirror in the bathroom of this building has been watching. 14 residents have noticed something odd in their reflections. A slight delay, perhaps. A blink that comes a moment too late. 3 have stopped looking altogether. Wise choice. The others will understand soon. My bathroom mirror. I've noticed that. Haven't I? Or am I just imagining it now because he said it? Memory is such a strange thing. It bends so easily. I try to remember this morning, brushing my teeth, and the recollection feels slippery, like trying to hold water. The announcer continues unfazed. Third story. There is a sound in the walls. Not rats, though that's what everyone assumes. It's too rhythmic to be rats. Too purposeful. If you listen carefully at 3:17 a.m., and only at 3:17 a.m., you can hear it's almost like breathing. Patient. I have heard something in the walls. 2 nights ago, maybe 3. I did think it was rats. The building is old after all. Old buildings have rats. Old buildings have lots of things. That's what I told myself as I lay in bed, listening to the soft scratch, scratch behind the drywall. It did sound like breathing. Traffic report now, the announcer says, and I almost laugh at the absurdity. Traffic report at nearly fun a.m. But I don't laugh. Something stops the sound in my throat. Main Street is clear, as always at this hour. The street light at the intersection with Oak has been flickering for 6 days. It's not an electrical problem. Under its intermittent glow, you can see things that aren't there during the day. Or perhaps they're always there, and we simply can't see them in steady light. A dog has been sitting under that light for 3 hours now. It hasn't moved. It isn't a real dog. A Main Street, Oak intersection. That's 2 blocks from here. I walk past it every day to work. The light has been flickering. I remember now. It made me uncomfortable yesterday evening, though I couldn't say why. There was a dog. I remember the dog. It looked at me. Its eyes were wrong. Weather, the announcer continues smoothly, will be consistent with your expectations. Cloudy. A 60% chance of rain that will neither fall nor not fall. Temperature will be irrelevant. You'll feel cold regardless. This cold comes from somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. I realize I am cold. My apartment is always too warm, the radiator runs hot, and the landlord won't fix it. But now I'm cold. Not shivering cold. Deeper than that. The kind of cold that settles into your bones and makes them ache with memories of winter. Now for our community calendar. The voice says, and there's something almost playful in its tone. Almost. Tomorrow, the sun will rise at 6:47 a.m., though some of you will see it rise at different times. This is normal. Do not mention this to others. They will think you're confused. You're not confused. Time is just more flexible than you've been taught. I look at my clock. 'Twas 53 a.m. The numbers glow red in the darkness. As I watch, they flicker. Just once. So quick I might have imagined it. On Wednesday, you will encounter someone you haven't seen in years. They will tell you they've been thinking about you. This is true. What they won't mention is that they've been standing outside your building every night for a week, looking up at your window. They can see you even when your lights are off. They've always been able to see in the dark. My mouth is dry. I should turn off the radio. I reach for it, but my hand stops halfway. I want to hear more. I need to hear more. There's a compulsion now, a pull stronger than comfort or reason. Thursday brings a small change. You'll lose something. Not something important, just something small. A button, a receipt, a memory of a conversation you had last Tuesday. You won't notice it's gone until much later, and by then, you won't be able to remember what it was. This is how it begins. Small things first, then larger things. Then things you can't define as large or small because you'll have forgotten what size means. Though the static beneath his voice grows louder, I can hear something in it now. Not words exactly. More like the suggestion of words. Like someone whispering from very far away or very close in a language I almost understand. Friday, the building superintendent will knock on your door. You will not answer. This is crucial. Do not answer. He died on Friday. Last Friday, I mean. Or next Friday. Fridays blur together after a while. But he'll knock. 6 times, always 6. If you count 7 knocks, count again. You counted wrong. The building superintendent, Mr. Henriksen. I saw him yesterday. He was fixing the mailboxes in the lobby. He looked fine. Tired, maybe, but fine. We talked about the weather. Didn't we? I'm trying to remember his face now, and it's hazy. Was he pale? Were his eyes focused? Did he blink? And now, the announcer says, his voice dropping lower, more intimate, a message specifically for the listener in apartment 4C. My whole body goes rigid. You're wondering if this is real. If I'm really talking to you specifically, personally. You're wondering if you're dreaming. You've pinched yourself twice since this broadcast began. Once on your left forearm, once on your right thigh. You felt the pain both times. Pain means you're awake. Except that in certain dreams you can feel pain. In certain dreams you can feel everything. I look down at my arm. There's a small red mark where I pinched it. I don't remember doing it. But it's there. The evidence is there. Here's what you need to understand. The boundary between sleeping and waking isn't as clear as you think. You pass through it multiple times a night, sometimes without noticing. Right now, for instance, are you awake? You feel awake. But you felt awake in dreams before, haven't you? You've dreamed you woke up, checked your phone, started your day, only to actually wake up and realize none of it happened. My phone. I should check my phone. I should call someone, but it's almost 1 a.m. now. Who would I call? And what would I say? That a radio station is talking about me. That's insane. That sounds insane. The plant pot on your windowsill. The voice continues. Look at it now. I don't want to. Every instinct tells me not to turn my head, not to look. But I do. Slowly, I turn toward the window. The pot is there, still empty. Just terracotta and old soil, dark in the moonlight. Nothing has changed. Do you see it? The announcer asks. See what? I whisper, though he can't hear me. Can he? Look closer. There in the soil, something small, something green. I lean forward, squinting. My eyes must be playing tricks. The moonlight is strange tonight, watery and uncertain. But yes, there. Just barely visible above the soil line. A tiny shoot. Green and tender and absolutely impossible. You'll water it tomorrow, the voice says. You won't plan to. You won't think about it. But tomorrow morning, you'll fill a glass with water and pour it into that pot. And you'll say something. Just one word. You don't know what word yet. But when the moment comes, you'll know. The static is very loud now. I can barely hear the announcer beneath it. Or maybe the static is becoming the announcer. Maybe they were always the same thing. Our broadcast is ending soon. But before we go, a final story. This one is about you. All of them were about you, really, but this one especially. You are listening to this broadcast because you are meant to. Because on some level, you called out to us. In your loneliness, in your late night hours, you sent a signal into the dark, and we received it. We always receive them. The radio is warm now. Not just warm, hot. I should pull my hand away, but I'm holding it, I realize. Gripping it tight. My knuckles are white. What we are depends on what you believe we are. Signals from a distant station. Voices from inside your own mind. Messages from a place that exists between channels, between breaths, between seconds. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're listening, that you'll keep listening. That tomorrow night you'll turn on this radio again at 12:47 a.m. and we'll be here. We're always here. Wet, I say out loud. Who are you? For the first time, the announcer laughs. It's a soft sound, almost gentle, almost kind. We're the voice at the frequency you can only hear in the dark. We're the station that broadcasts from nowhere. We're the signal that finds you when you're most alone. We're what happens when you listen too carefully to silence. The static surges, overwhelming everything. I yank my hand away from the radio, and the moment I do, silence falls. Complete, absolute silence. Not even the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Not even the distant sound of traffic. I stare at the radio. Its frequency indicator is dark. The whole thing is off. I reach out with a shaking hand and turn the dial. Nothing happens. I check. It's not plugged in. It's a transistor radio. It runs on batteries. I open the battery compartment empty. It's been empty this whole time. I sit in the darkness. My heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat, in my fingertips, behind my eyes. Did I dream it? All of it. But the red mark on my arm is still there. The tiny green shoot in the plant pot is still there, unless those were always there, and I just never noticed. Outside my window, the streetlight at Main and Oak flickers, once, twice. In its unstable glow, I see a shape, too large to be a dog, too still to be anything living. It's looking up at my window. I close the curtains and get back into bed. My sheets still feel wrong. Tomorrow, I tell myself. Tomorrow I'll figure this out. Tomorrow I'll throw away the radio. Tomorrow I'll check myself into a doctor's office and explain that I'm not sleeping well, that I'm stressed, that I need help. But I know what I'll really do tomorrow. I'll go to work. I'll come home. I'll eat dinner. And at 12:47 a.m., I'll turn on the radio. Because I need to know what happens next. Because the voice was right. I did call out in my own way. Because being alone in the dark is frightening. But being alone with a voice, even a wrong voice, even an impossible voice, is somehow less frightening. Or maybe more frightening in a way that feels like company. I close my eyes. Somewhere in the walls, I hear that sound again. That patient rhythmic sound, like breathing, like waiting, like something counting down. The last thing I think before sleep takes me, or before I slip into whatever state I'm moving toward, is that I need to remember to water that plant tomorrow, and I need to remember the word I'll say when I do it. Somewhere, distant and close, I hear the echo of static. Somewhere the broadcast continues. Story 5. There were 8 of us when we entered the mist. I've counted and recounted 100 times, checking the group photo on my phone, the one we took at the trailhead before we started hiking. 8 faces smiling in afternoon sunlight. Marcus, Jen, Thomas, Kira, Derek, Sophie, James, and me. There are still 8 of us now. But they're not the same 8. We were supposed to be on Hartley Mountain for 3 days. A weekend hiking trip to celebrate Marcus's promotion. None of us had hiked this particular trail before, but it came highly recommended online. Beautiful views, moderate difficulty, well-marked paths. Perfect for a group of amateur hikers looking to spend time in nature. The mist rolled in on the first night. We'd set up camp in a clearing, made dinner over a portable stove, told stories around a campfire that Derek had insisted on building despite the fire restrictions posted at the trailhead. The sun set behind the mountains, turning the sky shades of orange and purple. Everything was perfect. Then Kira noticed the fog. "That's weird," she said, pointing down the trail we'd hiked up. It wasn't supposed to rain this weekend. The mist crept toward us like something living, something purposeful. It moved up the mountain in a solid wall, key obscuring trees and rocks, and everything else behind a blank white curtain. Within 10 minutes, it had reached our camp. Within 20, we couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. "It's just fog," Marcus said, ever practical. "It'll burn off by morning." But it didn't feel like normal fog. Normal fog is cold, damp, impersonal. This mist felt aware. It pressed against my skin like curious fingers, searching. When I breathed it in, it tasted strange, not unpleasant, but wrong somehow. Like breathing in memories that weren't mine. We decided to sleep it off. The mist would clear by morning, we told ourselves. We'd laugh about this later, back in the city, over beers and shared photos. I woke sometime in the darkest part of night to the sound of someone walking through the camp. Footsteps crunching on leaves, steady and deliberate. I unzipped my tent slightly and peered out. A figure moved through the mist. Human, shaped but indistinct, features blurred by the white that clung to everything. It walked past my tent, heading toward the trail, moving with the strange, purposeless purpose of someone sleepwalking. "Hey," I called out softly. "You okay?" The figure stopped, turned toward me, and even though I couldn't see its face, I felt it looking at me. Really looking. Seeing something about me I'd never noticed myself. Then it continued walking, disappearing into the mist. I should have woken the others. Should have done something. But exhaustion pulled me back down, and I told myself it was just someone going to pee in the woods. Just someone who couldn't sleep. Just normal camping things. In the morning, the mist was thicker. We couldn't see our hands in front of our faces. And Thomas was gone. His tent was empty, sleeping bag neatly folded, backpack missing. Like he'd packed up and left in the middle of the night. without telling anyone. He probably got spooked by the fog, Derek said. Decided to hike back down on his own, without telling anyone. Jen's voice was sharp with worry. That's not like him. But what else could we do? We couldn't see anything. Couldn't follow him. Couldn't even find the trail markers anymore. The mist had swallowed everything. We wait, Marcus decided. When it clears, we'll follow him down. He's probably already at his car, wondering where we are. So we waited. Ate breakfast from our supplies. Told jokes that felt forced. Avoided looking at Thomas's empty tent. The mist didn't clear. By afternoon, we were discussing whether to try hiking down blind when Thomas walked back into camp. He came from the direction of the trail, emerging from the mist like he'd been gone for 10 minutes instead of hours. His backpack was on his shoulders. His clothes were dry despite the damp air. He looked fine. Normal. Exactly like Thomas. "Where the hell were you?" Marcus demanded. Thomas blinked at him, confused. "What do you mean? I've been here the whole time. You were gone." "Your tent was empty." "No, I've been in my tent all morning. You guys were the ones acting weird, whispering and looking around like you'd lost something." He laughed, but it sounded off, like someone who'd learned to laugh by watching videos. "Are you feeling okay?" We stared at him. He stared back, that same confused, slightly concerned expression on his face. "Check the group photo," Kira said suddenly. She pulled out her phone, brought up the picture from the trailhead. Count. 8 people. 8 faces. Thomas was in the photo, standing between Derek and Sophie, smiling his familiar lopsided smile. "See," Thomas said. "I've been here all along. You guys are freaking out over nothing. But I remembered taking that photo. Remembered Thomas standing in a different spot, next to Marcus, not between Derek and Sophie. Remembered his smile being wider, more genuine. Didn't I?" The mist pressed closer, and somewhere in my mind, I felt something shift, a memory rearranging itself. The photo had always shown Thomas between Derek and Sophie. He'd always stood there. I was just confused. Tired. The altitude and the strange fog were playing tricks on me. "You're right," I heard myself say. "Sorry, Thomas. This fog is getting to me." He smiled. That same not quite right smile. "It's okay, it's getting to all of us." That night, I woke again to footsteps. This time I stayed in my tent, eyes wide, listening. Someone, or several someones, were walking around the camp. Walking in circles, actually, like they were pacing, or searching, or practicing. In the morning, Jen was different. Not gone, not missing, just different. She spoke with slightly incorrect grammar. Like English wasn't her first language, even though it was. She held her fork wrong at breakfast. She called Marcus, Mike, 3 times before he corrected her. And she looked genuinely confused by the correction. "Are you feeling okay?" Sophie asked her. "I'm fine," Jen said. Then, hesitantly, "This is normal, right? We're all fine." "You're acting weird," Kira said. Weird. Jen's face cycled through expressions too quickly. Confusion, concern, hurt, amusement. Like she was trying them all out, seeing which fit. "I don't feel weird. I feel exactly like myself. Like I've always felt." She looked at me then, and I saw something behind her eyes. Something that wasn't Jen. Something that was wearing Jen's face like a mask, still learning how to make the muscles move correctly. "I'm going for a walk," I announced, standing up abruptly. "Anyone want to come?" Everyone shook their heads. They were staring at Jen, but also not staring, like they wanted to look away, but couldn't quite manage it. I walked to the edge of camp, to where the mist was thickest, and I heard voices. Not our voices, other voices. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all talking at once in the white. They spoke in whispers and murmurs, comparing notes, sharing information. This one blinks too frequently. The memories are inconsistent. Needs more practice. They're starting to notice. We need to be more careful. There's always one who notices, but they never know what to do about it. I backed away slowly, returning to camp. Everyone was sitting exactly where I'd left them, frozen like a paused video. When I stepped into the clearing, they suddenly animated, continuing conversations I was sure they hadn't been having. "We should try to hike down," Marcus was saying, "even in the fog. We have compasses." "No," said Thomas, who wasn't Thomas. "We should stay. It's safer here. The mist will clear eventually." "How do you know?" Derek asked. Thomas smiled. "I just have a feeling." We voted. 5 wanted to stay. 3 of us, me, Sophie, and Kira, wanted to leave. Democracy decided we'd stay. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my tent with my phone, looking at that group photo, watching it change. Every time I looked away and looked back, someone was standing in a slightly different position. Someone's smile was different. Someone's eyes were a different color. And I realized the photo wasn't changing. My memory of it was. Something in the mist was editing my recollections, making me believe this had always been the correct version, making me accept whatever happened as normal. I forced myself to write notes. Thomas came back wrong. Jen is different. They're replacing us one by one and making us forget who they used to be. I read the notes back. They seemed paranoid. Crazy. Thomas and Jen were fine. They'd always been like this. What was I worried about? I crossed out the notes. Started again. Something is wrong. Don't trust your memories. Don't trust. My hand stopped. I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't write down what I was thinking. The mist had gotten into my head, was editing my thoughts as I formed them, was making it impossible to hold on to the truth I'd noticed. In the morning, Derek was gone from his tent, and 10 minutes later, Derek walked back into camp from the direction of the trail. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Anyone want coffee?" He'd never been a morning person. He'd never offered to make coffee for everyone. He'd never said, "Morning," without a proceeding. "Fuck this," or "God, I hate." "Sure," Marcus said. "Thanks, buddy." Marcus had never called Derek buddy in the 5 years they'd known each other. I looked around the camp. 8 people. 8 tents. Everything exactly as it should be. Except Sophie was standing wrong. Kira was breathing in an odd rhythm. James had been quiet this entire trip, and I couldn't remember a single thing he'd actually said. Had he always been this quiet? Or had whatever took him taken his voice first? Forgotten to give the replacement anything to say? "I need to leave," I said aloud. Everyone turned to look at me. 8 pairs of eyes, 8 familiar faces, 8 people I'd known for years. But in the mist behind them, I saw more figures. Dozens of them, hundreds. All standing at the edges of camp, all wearing faces I half recognized. All watching to see what I'd do. Leave. Marcus tilted his head at exactly the wrong angle. "Why would you leave? We're having such a good time." The mist. "We'll clear soon," Thomas finished. "It always does. We just have to be patient." "How do you know?" I demanded. "How do you know it always clears?" He smiled. Jen smiled. Derek smiled. Sophie, Kira, James, Marcus, all smiling in perfect unison. "Because we've been here before," they said together, their voices harmonizing in a way human voices shouldn't harmonize. "And you have too. You just don't remember yet." I grabbed my backpack, started shoving things inside, sleeping bag, water bottles, whatever I could reach. "Don't go," they said in that same unified voice. "You'll get lost in the mist. You'll wander forever. At least here you have us. You have friends. You have company." "You're not my friends." My hands were shaking. "You look like them," But you're not them. Where are they? What did you do with the real versions? The smiles faded. 8 faces regarded me with something like disappointment. Like I'd failed a test they'd been hoping I'd pass. "They're here," said the thing wearing Marcus's face. "They've always been here. In the mist, becoming, learning, changing into something better than they were. We all go into the mist eventually," said Jen's replacement. "Everyone does. And when we come back, we're improved, perfected. No more doubts. No more fears. No more of the messy, inconsistent things that make people so difficult. We're offering you a gift," said Thomas's voice. "The chance to become your best self. The self you've always wanted to be. All you have to do is walk into the mist. Let it know you. Let it learn you. Let it make you better." The figures at the edge of camp moved closer. I could see them more clearly now. Hundreds of people wearing hundreds of faces, all standing in the white, all waiting. Some looked recent. Some looked like they'd been there for years. Some looked like they'd been there so long that the faces had started to slip, revealing something else underneath. Something that had never been human. Something that had learned to pretend. I ran. Behind me, I heard them following. Not running. They didn't need to run. The mist was everywhere. There was nowhere to go that they weren't already waiting. But I ran anyway, backpack bouncing against my shoulders, branches grabbing at my clothes. I had no idea where I was going. Had no idea where the trail was. Had no idea if there even was a trail anymore, or if the mist had swallowed it completely, leaving only endless white and endless watching faces. I ran until I couldn't breathe, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed against a tree, gasping, crying, completely lost. And in the silence that followed, I heard my own voice calling from the mist. "Help! Is someone there? I'm lost! Please, I need help!" My voice, my exact voice. The thing in the mist had learned it, had learned me. And it was using my voice to call out, to lure me closer, to make me walk toward it thinking I was walking toward myself. Or maybe I was the one in the mist. Maybe the real me was out there, lost and scared. And I was the replacement, the thing that thought it was human, the copy that didn't know it wasn't original. How would I know? How would any of us know? I'm writing this now, 3 days later. Or what I think is 3 days. Time moves strangely in the mist. I'm still on the mountain, still lost, still surrounded by white that presses close and whispers secrets. I found the trail markers this morning, followed them down, reached the parking lot where we'd left our cars. There were 8 cars there, including mine, including the keys in my pocket that fit the locks perfectly. I got in, started the engine, drove down the mountain and back to the city, back to my apartment, back to my life. Everything seems normal. My boss welcomed me back to work. My friends texted to ask about the trip. My neighbor's cat still tries to sneak into my apartment when I open the door. But sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I see my face doing things I didn't tell it to do, expressions I didn't choose, smiles that feel practiced, and at night I hear footsteps in my apartment. Patient footsteps, circling, searching, learning. There are 8 of us now. 8 people who came down from the mountain. 8 faces that look right and sound right and act mostly right. But I've been counting. And every time I count, I get a different number. 7, 9, 8. It keeps changing, and I can't remember which count is correct. Can't remember if there's supposed to be 8, or if there always were 7, or if maybe, possibly, I'm the 9th, the extra, the one who shouldn't be here. The mist is outside my window now. It shouldn't be. We're miles from the mountain, and it's a clear day. But there it is, pressing against the glass like something that followed me home, like something that's been waiting for me to notice it. And in the mist, I see figures. 8 of them. Or 7. Or 9. Wearing familiar faces, waving at me. Smiling. Come back, they seem to say. You forgot something. You forgot us. You forgot yourself. Maybe they're right. Maybe I did forget. Maybe the person I think I am is just a story I've been telling myself. And the real me is still up on that mountain, walking in the mist, learning to be someone better. Or maybe I never left at all. Maybe I'm still sitting by that campfire, staring into the flames while the mist learns me. While it tries on my memories like clothes. While it practices being me until it gets it right. Maybe you're reading this and you think you know who I am. You think you remember me. But are you sure? Are you absolutely certain that the person you remember is the same person who came back? Are you certain you came back? The mist is everywhere now. I can see it even with my eyes closed. Can taste it in my water, can feel it in my breath, and I'm starting to think that's normal. That it's always been there, that I've always lived in the mist, and everything else. The city, the apartment, the life I think I'm living, is just a story the mist is telling me to keep me calm. There were 8 of us when we entered the mist. There are still 8 of us now, but maybe there always were. Maybe there always will be. Maybe 8 is just the number the mist needs. 8 faces to practice. 8 lives to learn. 8 people to perfect. And if one of us notices, if one of us remembers that things weren't always like this, well, the mist is patient. It will learn that one better. Practice longer. Until even they can't tell the difference between who they were and who they've become. Until all 8 are perfect. Until all 8 are the same. Until all 8 are missed. Story 6. I found the basement by accident. The house I'm renting is old, built in 1927 according to the lease. The landlord mentioned something about original features and historical charm, which I've learned is code for things don't quite work right and we're not going to fix them. The door to the basement is in the kitchen, hidden behind a pantry shelf. I only discovered it because I was trying to find where the mice were coming from. I moved the shelf, surprisingly light, like it wanted to be moved, and there it was, a door. Painted the same cream color as the walls, easy to miss if you weren't looking. It didn't have a lock, just a simple brass knob, tarnished with age. I should have left it alone. Should have pushed the shelf back and forgotten about it. But I was curious. Curiosity is such a small word for such a powerful compulsion. The stairs descending into darkness were steep and narrow. I used my phone flashlight. The beam cut through thick air that smelled of earth and old wood and something else. Something sweet and rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. The basement was larger than I expected. Not just a crawl space or storage area, but an actual room. The ceiling was low. I had to duck my head, and the walls were exposed brick, sweating with moisture. But in the center of the room was something I couldn't explain. A stage. Not a modern stage, a puppet theater. Miniature, but elaborate, maybe 4 feet tall, with red velvet curtains and a painted proscenium arch decorated with gold scrollwork. It looked Victorian, or maybe older. The kind of thing you'd see in a museum, carefully preserved behind glass. But this wasn't in a museum. This was in my basement, and it looked used, recently used. The curtains weren't dusty. The paint wasn't faded. In the gloom, the little theater seemed to glow with its own light. I approached it slowly. My phone flashlight revealed more details. There were tiny benches arranged in front of the stage, as if for an audience. Puppet-sized benches, or child-sized, I realized with a shiver. They were worn smooth, the wood polished by years of use. Behind the stage, I found them. The puppets. They hung on hooks on the wall, Marionettes, elaborately crafted. There were 6 of them. A man in a black suit and top hat. A woman in a Victorian dress. A child in sailor clothes. A dog, grotesquely realistic, with glass eyes that caught my phone light and threw it back. A clown with a painted smile that was too wide. And something else. Something I couldn't quite identify. It might have been human once, but it was wrong. Too many joints. Limbs that bent in directions limbs shouldn't bend. I shouldn't have touched them. I know that now. But I reached out and lifted the man puppet from his hook. He was heavier than he looked. The wood was smooth and warm, like it had just been held. His strings were intact, all of them, running from his limbs to a control bar that fit perfectly in my hand. And he moved. Not because I moved the strings. I wasn't moving the strings. But his head turned. Just slightly. Just enough for his painted eyes to look at me. At his mouth, carved into a permanent expression of shock or surprise, seemed to move. Just a fraction. Just enough to suggest words. I dropped him. He clattered to the floor, strings tangling. And from somewhere in the darkness of the basement, I heard laughter. Not human laughter, higher pitched, wooden, like wind chimes made of bones. I ran. Up the stairs, slamming the door behind me, pushing the shelf back into place. My heart was hammering. My hands were shaking. I told myself I imagined it. Old houses make sounds. Light plays tricks. The puppet didn't move. It couldn't have moved. I didn't go back down for 3 days. But on the 3rd night, I heard something. I was lying in bed, trying to sleep, when music drifted up from below. Tinny music, mechanical, like an old music box or a carnival calliope. And beneath it, voices. Small voices, high and strange. I should have called someone, the landlord, the police, anyone. But who would believe me that there was a puppet show happening in my basement? At 3 in the morning, with no one performing it? Instead, I got up. I crept down the stairs to the kitchen. The music was louder here. It was definitely coming from behind the pantry shelf. I moved the shelf aside. The basement door was open. I don't remember opening it. I specifically remember closing it. I remember the click of the latch, but it was open now and light was spilling up the stairs. Not bright light, wavering candlelight, warm and yellow and inviting. I descended. The puppet theater was lit. Dozens of candles surrounded it, casting dancing shadows across the brick walls. The stage curtains were open, and the puppets were performing. All 6 of them. Moving with fluid grace, their strings invisible in the candlelight. They were enacting a scene, a family scene. The man and woman stood in what appeared to be a living room, painted in miniature on a backdrop. The child played between them. The dog sat attentively. The clown watched from the corner, that too wide smile never changing. And the wrong thing, the impossible puppet, lurked at the edge of the stage, half in shadow. I watched, frozen. I couldn't look away. The movements were too precise, too natural. These weren't the jerky motions of traditional puppetry. These puppets moved like living creatures. The woman gestured as she spoke. Yes, she was speaking. I could hear her tiny voice, clear as crystal despite having no apparent source. The man nodded. The child laughed. They were playing out a story, a domestic scene. Breakfast, maybe. Morning routines. The kind of mundane moment that makes up most of life. But there was something wrong about it. Something off. The timing was strange. The man would turn to pour coffee, but the pot would be there before he reached for it. The child would open his mouth to speak, and the words would come a fraction of a second before his jaw moved. They were performing it backwards. Or not backwards exactly, slightly ahead. Like they knew what would happen next and were preparing for it a moment too soon. The music swelled. The scene changed. Now the family was at dinner. The table was set with tiny dishes, microscopic food. They ate. They talked. But their conversations made no sense. The words were English. I could recognize the language, but the sentences didn't connect. It was like listening to someone recite a dictionary entry for family dinner, without understanding what those words meant when put together. "Father will come home at 6:17, the woman said. "He will remove his coat, gray coat, wool, 3 buttons. He will say the thing about weather." The thing about weather, the child agreed. "It is said. It is done. Tomorrow the weather will be different." "Different but same," the man added. His voice was deeper, resonant. "Same as it always has been in the future that already happened." I wanted to leave. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to turn around, to run back upstairs, to leave this house entirely. But I couldn't move. The performance held me, like I was part of the audience, like I had paid for a ticket and was obligated to watch until the end. The scene changed again. Now the family was sleeping. 3 beds on the stage. The man, the woman, the child, each in their own bed. The dog at the foot of the child's bed. The clown standing between the beds, watching. The wrong puppet nowhere to be seen. "He dreams of water," the woman said, though she was lying down, eyes closed. "Deep water. Water that has no bottom and no shore." "She dreams of doors," the man said. "Doors that open into other doors. Doors all the way down. Never a room, just doors." "I dream of the person watching," the child said. His voice was clearer than the others, less wooden, more human. "I dream of them standing at the bottom of stairs, afraid to move, afraid to leave. I dream that they understand this is for them." My blood turned to ice. The child sat up in his bed, turned, looked directly at me. "Hello," he said. "We've been waiting for you." The other puppets sat up too, all of them turning to face me. Even the dog, its glass eyes gleaming. Even the clown, though he had been facing me all along. His smile seemed wider now, impossibly wide. "What is this?" I managed to whisper. "A performance," the woman said. "A play. A prophecy. Take your pick. Words are so flexible. We perform the future," the man explained. "Not a future. Your future. We've been performing it for 3 days now. Since you found us. Since you touched the strings." "That's impossible," I said. "Impossible is just a word for things you don't understand yet," the child said. "Watch. We'll show you." The scene changed again. Now the stage showed a basement, my basement, the puppet theater, and in front of the theater stood a puppet I hadn't seen before. A new one. It wore clothes like mine, jeans, a gray t-shirt. It had hair like mine, and when it turned its wooden face toward me, I saw that it had been carved to look like me. It was me, a puppet version of me, and it was screaming. No sound came from its mouth, but I could see it in the way its jaw was hinned open, in the desperate angle of its limbs. It was reaching towards something, trying to escape something. The other puppets surrounded it, closing in. The clown's hands on its shoulders, the woman's hands on its arms, the man, the child, the dog, all touching it, holding it, pulling it towards something I couldn't see. And then the wrong puppet appeared, crawling from the shadows at the back of the stage, moving with that impossible gait, joints bending in ways that made my stomach turn. It reached the me puppet. It touched the me puppet's face. And the me puppet stopped screaming, went still, docile. It turned to face the audience, to face me, and its expression changed. The terror smoothed out, became blank, became accepting. "That's tomorrow," the child said. "Or today, technically. Today at 3:40, 7 in the morning, which is in approximately 4 minutes. "No," I said. I took a step backward. "No, this isn't real. This isn't happening. It's already happened," the woman said. And it's happening now. And it will happen in 4 minutes. Time is so strange down here. It all blends together. 3 minutes now, the man corrected. I turned to run. But the stairs were gone, not just dark, gone. Where the stairs should have been was just more basement. More brick walls, more shadows. The space had changed, expanded, or maybe contracted. Maybe I had been moving farther into it without realizing, drawn forward by the performance. "You can't leave yet," the child said. "The show isn't over. There's one more scene," the woman added. The most important scene, where the puppets on stage moved aside. The backdrop changed. Now it showed the world above, my kitchen, my living room, my bedroom, and in each room, a puppet version of me, going through motions, making breakfast, sitting on the couch, lying in bed. But the movements were wrong, too precise, too rehearsed, like a performance that had been practiced 1,000 times. "This is what comes after," the man said. "After you join us, after you become part of the show. You'll go upstairs. You'll live your life. You'll do all the things you've always done. But you'll know, somewhere deep inside, you'll know that you're not quite real anymore. That you're performing. That every word, every gesture, every thought has been scripted, has been played out on this stage before you live it." 2 minutes, the child said. "Why?" I asked. My voice broke. "Why are you doing this?" "We're not doing anything," the woman said. "We're showing, we're revealing. This is what we do. We perform the truth. The truth that free will is an illusion. That your life is a script written before you were born. That you've always been a puppet, and you just didn't know who was pulling the strings." 1 minute, the child said. The wrong puppet was moving toward the front of the stage. Toward me. It was the size of my hand, but it seemed larger. It seemed to fill my vision. Those impossible joints. That wrong face that was almost human, but not quite. "Who pulls the strings?" I whispered. "Look up," the clown said. His voice was different from the others. Deeper. Like wood groaning in a storm. I looked up. The ceiling of the basement was gone. Or no, it was there, but I could see through it. See through the floor of my kitchen. Through the foundation of the house. Through layers of reality I didn't know existed. And above it all, impossibly far away and impossibly close, I saw hands. Enormous hands. Or were they normal-sized, and I was tiny? I couldn't tell. They reached down through all those layers holding strings. Strings that descended into the darkness. Strings that ended at the puppet theater. Strings that ended at the puppets. Strings that ended at me. I felt them now. Attached to my wrists, my ankles, my head. I had always felt them. I realized. I had just thought they were called things like obligation, habit, fear, desire. But they were strings. They had always been strings. 30 seconds, the child said. The wrong puppet reached the edge of the stage, reached out one impossible hand, touched the air in front of it, and where it touched, reality rippled, peeled back, revealed something underneath, something I don't have words for, something that was neither light nor dark, neither matter nor void, something that was simply wrong. Simply impossible. Simply true. 10 seconds, the child said. 9. 8. I pulled against the strings, tried to run, tried to scream. But I was already moving, already stepping forward, already reaching toward the wrong puppet, toward that revelation at the edge of the stage. 7. 6. 5. The puppets were singing now. A lullaby in a language I almost knew. The kind of song that makes you remember dreams you never had. The kind of song that unmakes you, note by note. 4, 3, 2. My hand touched the wrong puppet's hand, and I understood. I understood everything. Why the house had this basement. Why the puppet theater was here. Why I had found it. Why I would never leave it. Why no one who found it ever left it. 1. The transformation wasn't painful. That would have been better. Pain would have been human. This was just a shift, a rearrangement. Wood grains spreading across my skin. My joints hardening, simplifying. My thoughts becoming dialogue. My memories becoming scenes. My future becoming a performance that had already been performed. 0, the child said. Welcome to the show. I'm still in the basement. Or I'm upstairs. Or I'm both places at once. I perform my life. I go to work. I eat meals. I sleep. But I know what I am now. I know what we all are. Puppets in a theater, performing for an audience we can never see, controlled by hands we can't comprehend. And every night at 3:47, I come back to the basement. I take my place on the stage, and I perform. I perform tomorrow. I perform yesterday. I perform the moment you're living right now, reading this, thinking you're safe, thinking you're real. But you're not. You're here too. You've always been here. From the moment you started reading, you became part of the audience. And the audience always becomes part of the show. That's the rule. That's how this works. The wrong puppet is reaching toward you now. Can you feel it? That sensation at the back of your neck. That certainty that something is standing behind you, just out of sight. Those are the strings, your strings. You've always had them. The show is starting. Your show. And it's beautiful. And it's terrible. And it's already over. The curtain falls. And then rises again. And again. Forever. And with that, our time tonight comes to an end. To everyone who stayed until the very last moment, thank you, truly. Having you here, sharing these shadows, makes the darkness feel a little less empty. I'm grateful you chose to spend a piece of your night here with me. I hope these stories brought you that quiet shiver, the kind that makes you feel alive. There's something special about this, all of us, connected by the love of a good story whispered in the dark. I'll be back soon with more echoes from the void, more mysteries waiting to be told. Until then, rest well, sleep deeply, and if you hear footsteps that shouldn't be there, just remember, they're only stories. Oh, and before you drift off, if you enjoyed our time together, a like and a subscribe will make sure we meet again, somewhere in the dark. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.